What is going on, Raider Nation? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video. Uh, I'm disappointed as hell, man. We're gonna talk about this because this shit's not acceptable, man. The Raiders lost 23-18, and it is time. It is 100% time that the Las Vegas Raiders really think about moving on from Josh McDaniels. The guy's decision making is crazy. I don't understand what the fuck Josh McDaniels is thinking to kick a field goal at the end of the game. There's 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. For what reason would you kick a field goal when you're down 8? And then at that point, you're going to be down 5. And even if you were to get a stop, you're going to get the ball with like a minute and 50 seconds left with no timeouts, and you still got to go downfield and score a touchdown. Why not go for it? You only need 4 yards to pick up the first down. You're at like the 6-7 yard line. That made no sense to me. I don't know what the hell Josh McDaniels thinking, and I honestly think the Raiders need to really start looking forward to the future. Josh McDaniels not a good coach. You can say Jimmy Garoppolo's not a good quarterback, and I wouldn't knock you guys for that. I think Jimmy G is definitely, he's an interesting quarterback, right? Let's just be honest. He sucked for a lot of this game. And if Jimmy Garoppolo made better decisions over the course of this game, the Raiders could have won this game. Like, let's be honest, we are a better football team than this team right here. To me, the Steelers aren't that good of a team, and we should have won this game. And ultimately, we lost because of Josh McDaniels not being able to properly manage the game, and Jimmy Garoppolo throwing 2 interceptions, 2 really bad interceptions, right? The one at the end of the game doesn't really matter. That was really just, you had like 2 or 3 plays, if that. But really, it was the 2 interceptions prior to that point that, in my opinion, really lost this game for the Raiders. And I hope you guys can hear me. I'm already ranting over here. I don't even know if you guys can hear me on the other side. There's some super chats that have come in. Let's talk about this. The first one here comes from KG. Shout out to you. Said second and third quarter were a complete waste. You cannot throw away half the game and expect to win. That is 100% fact. I don't know for what reason the Las Vegas Raiders thought that, we came out on the first drive of the game, and on the first drive of the game, I take that back. I believe it was actually the second drive of the game. The Raiders went down and scored a touchdown. It's always like we'll start on the first or second drive and score points, and then we go silent. And let's be honest, up until the final 2 drives, the Raiders didn't do anything, and that's not how football's played. That's just not how it's played. I know we only lost by 5 points, but to me, this game was a much worse game than where we ended up, right? I don't think the Raiders, really scored 18 points in this game. I would argue that 11 of those 18 points came in garbage time. Let's just be honest, right? The Steelers probably looked at it like we're up 16 and there's like 6-7 minutes left. This team hasn't really done a whole lot. I don't know. Frustrating. Very frustrating, if you guys ask me. Stephen Webb said bad decision making by Jimmy and missed opportunity by Peters. Oh, and McDaniels, let's run Jacobs behind the damn fullback and not a single back set. It's interesting because I think we only had Jakob Johnson in like on one play, at least that I noticed him. I don't disagree with it. I'm not too big on fullbacks, me personally, but I get it, right? Last season, Josh had a lot of success running behind Johnson, but this year it's just not working. That same run scheme that we had last season, it's not working. And part of why that's not working is because it's so based off of every guy pre-snap knows exactly who they're about to block. And the second those shifts happen right before the ball gets snapped, the second the corner – slot corner jumps towards the inside and is ready to blitz, come off the edge. Guys just aren't going to be able to make all those blocks, right? It's not like a zone run where you run towards a side and kind of pick off whoever kind of jumps into your gap. I think I think it's just really bad, man. I don't even know what to say at this point. We're going to talk about this, man. We're going to get into all of these comments. I see way too many comments at this point. If you guys want to be featured, Super Chat's the way to go. Make sure you guys drop a Super Chat. It also obviously supports the channel. I got to give a shout out real quick to Davante Adams. 13 catches, 172 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The guy's a beast. The Raiders don't deserve a Davante Adams, man. I'm just telling you guys right now. He is so freaking good, and the rest of this team is garbage. What Davante Adams is able to do out there, it's special. And I don't know when the last time we had a Davante Adams caliber wide receiver has been, but the guy you can just tell is better than everybody out there. So I'm very happy that the Raiders have Davante Adams. And I know at this point we're going to start to question, like, should the Raiders look forward to this upcoming draft? Should we look forward to Caleb Williams, Drake May, Quinn Ewers, or whoever else it may be out there? Should the Raiders start looking forward to that rookie quarterback? And, there's like 7 good quarterbacks coming out of this class. I think the Raiders have to consider it. Now, obviously, we have Aiden O'Connell, and I would definitely like to see how that could possibly play out. But I'm not 100% sure with Aiden O'Connell, right? And that's just me being 100% honest. I think there's a reason why he was a 4th-round pick as opposed to like a top 5 pick coming out. The fact that he's not very mobile, I think, could ultimately limit him a little bit. But I do like what I saw from him in the preseason. And, of course, I would give him every opportunity to prove that he's not the guy before we just go out and draft someone else, right? And I know a lot of us are going to start calling for Aiden O'Connell to come in right now and start. And I definitely understand why you guys feel like that. And I kind of feel like that too, right? What I saw from Jimmy Garoppolo in the first 3.5 quarters was garbage. The guy had like 180 yards, 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He looked very, very bad, right? Larry DM said, our offensive genius coach didn't trust his offense when it mattered most. Why is he here then? And it's just 100% fact. I posted this on Twitter, and so many people were saying that the Raiders made the right decision to kick the field goal. And to me, that's the worst thing you could have done. We're at like the 6-7 yard line at that point, right? And I think it was 4th and 4, and I believe we could have still picked the first down at that point. And maybe we're on the 4-yard line and it was a goal situation. Don't quote me on that. But we weren't so far away that it was impossible to get to. And at that point, with 2 minutes and 18 seconds left, kicking a field goal didn't make sense because you still had to go downfield and score a touchdown. I would have rather just went for it right then and there and not got it and then have to stop them at that point. That would have made more sense because then you don't have the wasted time, right? From kicking a field goal, the kickoff, the punt to get the ball back, right? There's a lot of wasted moments within that you may not have to have dealt with, right? So I don't know. I personally did not agree with the call. I think Josh McDaniels' inability to manage games properly is a big part of why I think the Raiders need to look for a different coach. And, I say that because, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Denver Broncos, they're just 2 crappy teams, right, around the NFL. And the Raiders barely beat the Broncos. And we got our asses kicked by the Steelers. And when we play an actual good team, which we did against the Bills, we got our asses kicked, right? They blew us out. Like, I don't know at this point, right? How many games are the Raiders going to get blown out by, or how many games is the offense going to score like 7 points? And then we're not going to do anything past that, right? Plus, where the hell has this defense been, man? I know 23 points isn't a whole lot, right? Now, I'll be the first to say, guys, I think the defense looks better this season than it has in the past. And we're not forcing turnovers, and I think that's a big part of it. As the Super Chat previously mentioned, Marcus Peters, man, you got to make those plays right there. Marcus Peters gave up a 72-yard touchdown on the drive before. You got to make it up by intercepting that pass. Kenny Pickett threw it right to you, right? You got to intercept that pass, return it to the house, because that changes the entire game for the Raiders. And it's not like, Marcus Peters didn't get beat. The guy gave up a 72-yard touchdown. The Steelers only scored 2 touchdowns this game, right? And Marcus Peters was one of those 2 touchdowns. So to me, Marcus Peters has to make up for that touchdown. And that too, it's one thing if you give up like a 4-yard touchdown pass, that really doesn't matter, right? Because the team's already driven all the way downfield up to that point. But to give them a chunk play, a massive 72-yard touchdown, that shit's not acceptable, man. So to me, Marcus Peters has to do a better job. But I will state this, outside of that one play, he also did make a lot of good plays outside of that, right? A lot of really solid plays in which he came up, defended the run, 2 plays where he had like tackles for losses on the running back. So again, minus that one play, he had a couple of really good plays. But for me, he has to intercept that pass. That changes this entire game. We have no turnovers right now, right? I don't think the Raiders have forced any turnovers through 3 games. That's not what we're hearing back in preseason. So I need the Raiders defense to step it up a little bit in that aspect. We got to get some turnovers. But overall, I think the defense is playing better. 23 points, you don't throw an interception by Jimmy G twice. Maybe it's not 23 points. Maybe it's like 16 points, right? Either way, Jimmy G has to play better. The coaching staff has to be better. Alex Torres says the old line was terrible. I don't know. I don't know if it was necessarily terrible, right? Because um, Josh Jacobs averaged 3.6 yards per attempt. That's better than what he averaged in the first 2 weeks. Also, if you guys think about it, the Steelers' defensive line was, I believe, the third best defensive line coming into this game in terms of pass rush. And they got 4 sacks on Jimmy G. And I think 2 of those 4 sacks came because the offensive tackles just didn't get out of their stance quick enough, right? Plus, I think there were also some sacks and certain things that were maybe on the quarterback as opposed to the offensive line. One play that comes to mind is the second interception that Jimmy Garoppolo threw. The guy had all day to throw it, and at the end of it, he throws an interception, which made no sense to me. I mean, to me, those are the type of plays that, like, those are the plays that Derek Carr was making last year, right? Derek Carr had a terrible game against the Steelers, and I believe that was the game he ended up getting benched, right? You can't make those type of decisions, right? Like when we got Jimmy G, the hope was is that he wouldn't make bad decisions. He would make good decisions, and he'd put us in a spot to win. He would manage the game, and that's not happening right now, right? So I don't know. I think Jimmy Garoppolo has to play a lot better, and the team has to be better. At the end of the day, the turnover battle is a big difference as to winning games. If you guys just look at every game so far this season that's happened in the NFL, chances are the team that has a turnover battle wins like 75% of the time, right? Or the team that wins the turnover battle, right? Let's get into some of your guys' super chats. A lot of you guys say some really, really good things. Koljit T, shout out to my brother. He's having a baby, so shout out to him. He said we should have kicked it during the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter and then went for it at the end with 2 minutes, 30 seconds left in the game. 2 bad calls, game management. I agree. We went for it in the fourth quarter at the end of the game. Massive mistake, if you guys ask me. I should have kicked the field goal at that point, right? I do understand why you're going to be a little bit more of let's push the ball, let's try to get the points, or let's try to score the touchdown and get that as opposed to the field goal. But at that point of the game, you could have possibly just taken the points, right? But I think with 2 minutes and 18 seconds left in the game, you got to go for it at that point. I think that right there was, and let's be honest, I don't have it, right, but I'm sure someone out there has someone has every single time Josh McDaniels has made a mistake, right? I'm sure someone has those stats out there. I don't have them, but we've seen them, right? We've seen moments when there's like a minute and 30 seconds left. And I know this happened at least twice last year. And then Josh McDaniels just like ran the ball and he just went into the halftime, or he would just knee it with like 50 seconds left. Right? Those type of things don't make sense to me, right? Because if you're going to do that, but then say, oh, Jimmy G can have the ball with like 20 seconds left and, potentially score a touchdown, go 80 yards. Those two things don't correlate to me, right? So Josh McDaniels has to do a lot better job to score touchdowns, be aggressive, but don't be so aggressive that you're leaving points out there when it may make sense to take the points, right? So I don't know. I think Josh McDaniels definitely is very questionable. Shout out to my brother. Hijinks said trade Mark Davis. That's not going to happen, right? We can't trade Mark Davis. And I don't think Mark Davis is a bad owner. I think some people are way too harsh on Mark Davis. Mark Davis has always put people in charge and taken a step back. And I think that's the best thing an owner can do. Shout out to Adele said Davante Adams will not stay if we keep playing like this. I don't know if I agree with that one. I think Davante Adams also has it in his mind that, I picked the Raiders, so I need to kind of make this win a little bit. So I think Davante Adams probably is not going to go anywhere. And it's not like he's putting up bad stats, right? Davante Adams crushing it, you got to give Adams a big shout out. 13 catches, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Even Jacoby Myers had 7 catches and 85 yards. So he had a pretty solid game as well. It's weird because the Raiders put up almost 400 yards on the offensive side, but yet those 400 yards didn't actually translate to points. And that's the big thing for me, right? And I think obviously, we got down to the 50-yard line on one of them in which Jimmy G threw an interception. And I think even on the other one, we were on the opponent's side of the field and he threw that interception. Interceptions are killer, man. Jimmy G has to do a better job in that instance. Tripp said, what would it take for Mark Davis to dump Ziegler and McDaniels? this doesn't make sense to me. And you guys tell me if I'm wrong with this take here. Dave Ziegler's a very, very bad general manager. Very, very bad, in my opinion. At least so far, what he's done. And maybe it'll pan out. But at this point, I've been in the draft community now for the last 5 seasons. I watch all the prospects out there, and Byron Young was a guy that wasn't even on anyone's radar. No one had this guy ranked as, hey, this is a top 12 defensive tackle. But yet, this guy went in the third round. To me, that didn't make sense. I thought that was such a bad pick. And, I gave it the benefit of the doubt. I said, maybe Dave Ziegler sees something that we all don't know what the hell we're talking about. Because it happens, right? These guys have more information than we do. But after I watched Byron Young's tape, I said, this guy doesn't look impressive at all. And I know some beat writers that work at Alabama that literally DM'd me on Twitter, and they said, why'd you guys take Byron Young so high? He's not even that good. The guy sucks, right? And those are the type of decisions that are killing the Raiders. Go back to last year. Zamir White, bad. Thayer Munford, bad. Even this year, Tyree Wilson, Michael Mayer has, I think, 1 catch for 2 yards. And then he had the 2-point conversion today, but he has 1 catch for 2 yards. Luke Musgrave, also a rookie tight end, went for over 100 yards today for the Green Bay Packers. Don Kincaid has over 100 yards, I think like 12, 13 catches on the season so far. Michael Mayer has 1 catch for 2 yards. We could have taken Brian Branch, who has, I think, like 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, a pick 6. We could have taken Jalen Carter, who's an absolute force, but yet we took these other guys, and it goes even beyond the draft picks. You look at some of the guys we brought in, right? I like Robert Spillane, although I don't think he's been great. So he's an okay pickup. But then you can even go beyond those guys, right? Like Chandler Jones hasn't worked out, right? We paid him for 3 years. The guy has not worked out. Even then, coming into last year, even when he did play, he had 4 sacks. That's not worth the amount of money he got paid. He was paid as a top 7 to 10 defensive end. Go beyond that. Just some of the guys that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler have brought in don't make a lot of sense. Now, I can also give them credit for the Davante Adams one, although some people would say, Davante Adams only came here because of Derek Carr. I don't know if that's 100% fact, but you can give them credit for Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers. But there's just so many questionable things, paying Derek Carr and then giving him the no trade clause, paying Hunter Renfrow. The guy has like 4 targets on the season so far, and he's paid pretty highly. Gave Darren Waller a contract, right? Some of these things, it just doesn't make sense to me. And at this point, what would it take for Mark Davis to dump Ziegler and McDaniels? I really don't know. I really, really don't know what it's going to take. I would just assume that Mark Davis, if we win like 4 games this season, I would just assume that Mark Davis understands that these guys are not it. And the hope would be that, if we have like a top 4 pick, that we don't let this regime handle that, right? And we would go out and get one of these other coaches. Dan Quinn's a great defensive coach for the Cowboys. He may be available, right? The Dolphins put up 70 points. Go look at their offensive coordinator and see if that guy will come over here, right? Let's go find someone who, and I hate doing this. I really, really hate this. Even looking at Josh McDaniels' offense, it's so bland. There's no pre-snap motion. There's no, let's run heavy outside zone, which is what all the great teams are doing. The Niners are hitting for 200 yards a game running these zone runs, as are the Dolphins. Right? The Vikings did it prior to this coaching staff. To me, the Raiders are just so like power heavy based, and so like it just doesn't make sense, man. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of Josh McDaniels and the way he's kind of running things right now. The decision making, it's all questionable, and I know a lot of other people that I've spoken to have said, hey, let's give Josh McDaniels this season. And the hope is that last season, he had Derek Carr and that just wasn't his guy. And Jimmy G, he'll be able to put it together. It just doesn't look like that's happening, man. It's just where we're at, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the Raiders kind of finish the season out, but losing to the Steelers, and you got some tough games coming up, right? The Chargers they're one of the better teams in the league, right? So to me, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting game coming up next week. Raiders plots to trade Jimmy to the Jets for draft capital. I don't know if the New York Jets would take Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you guys think? Do you guys think the New York Jets would be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo? If so, like, what do you guys think they would possibly give up for that? I don't know if they could even make it work from a contract perspective. On top of that, they have Aaron Rodgers, who they hope can come back next season and kind of lead them. Uh, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And I know some people are saying, let's roll with Aiden O'Connell. Shout out to you for the super chat. Said, can we please play AOC? I can live with losing with someone I can put faith in. Why draft Tucker, who was the fastest player in the draft with pads on? And that's a fact, man. Trey Tucker needs more touches. It doesn't make sense to me why Trey Tucker doesn't get more carries. He doesn't get more catches and targets. Put him out there on returns. Like, use Trey Tucker. The guy is a legit playmaker. It doesn't make sense to me why Josh McDaniels isn't using our best weapons. And I know, getting Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers the ball makes a lot of sense. And right now they're probably better receivers. But let's give Trey Tucker an end around or two, right? And maybe from a scheme perspective, Josh may have thought to himself, hey, it doesn't make sense this week to give Trey Tucker those end arounds because the Steelers are a heavy 3-4 team. Their outside linebackers are a lot faster, and those guys will, they stand up in a 2-point stance. They may see a end around coming. But let's run some inside zone with the motion, and the defensive ends won't be able to play the backside as much. Maybe a lane pops here or there, right? Josh McDaniels has to do more. He has to be more creative, and he's not doing it right now, right? And I agree with what you're saying. I would be okay with AOC as well, but are we sure that AOC is going to be ready, right? Or would we be hurting him in the long run by throwing him in there right now, right? I don't know. I think it's questionable, but I definitely see all the comments saying let's start Aiden O'Connell. I definitely understand why you guys would want to roll forward with him. Let's be honest, the Raiders had 7 points when the game really mattered, right? Up until 8 minutes left or whatever it was at the point where the Raiders scored that other touchdown. At that point, Jimmy G disappears, and we've seen this now. He's disappeared in the second and third quarters, basically of the other games as well. Right. So this isn't anything new. And it's weird because it's not just Jimmy G, and I see people who put these comments out there. They'll say, hey, we should have stuck with Derek Carr. But the truth is Derek Carr had these same struggles as well. So to me, something needs to get corrected. Either, Derek Carr and Jimmy G, who have won, right? Derek Carr's at least won with the Saints. I know it's a limited sample, but Jimmy G's won in the past too, right? Like, is it Josh McDaniels that's the issue, that's not able to, really get it going? So I don't know. I think the Raiders really have to figure it out. At this point, some of what we've done, it's not working, right? And I think for the Raiders, you really have to think about it. How do you get back to the point where you can start winning? Your draft picks have to hit. Your depth players, right? The guys you pick in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, those guys have to pan out. Even the 3rd round picks, Byron Young being a 3rd round pick, he should be playing and he should be having a little bit of success. You can go look around the league at guys that are drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds. And there's guys that are productive, a lot of guys that are productive football players. And Byron Young right now looks very, very bad, right? It looks very bad. He's constantly getting blown off the line of scrimmage. It's just bad, man. Tevin Carter said, if McDaniels is fired, who would you hire? It's really hard to say who would I hire. I like Dan Quinn a lot. Obviously, Dan Quinn was a head coach in the past. I believe he was. I don't think it worked out for him. But he's a great defensive coordinator. And I think sometimes guys that, become first-time head coaches may not really have what it takes to be able to have success. But if Dan Quinn is available and he's looking for a head coach position, I would think about him. I forget the name of the Miami Dolphins offensive coordinator. I would consider a guy like him. In the short term, if you fire Josh McDaniels I don't even think it makes sense to fire McDaniels, I guess, at this point. If you guys keep him, maybe we won 3 games, right? And we have the 1st overall pick or something. I don't know. So I don't know if Mark Davis looks at it in that aspect, that if we keep McDaniels, at least we'll set ourselves up to have possibly a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overall pick, right? I see a lot of people saying, is this a tank season? I don't know. It's hard to tell because, if this was a tank season, I would assume that the Raiders would say, hey, let's put, let's roll out Byron Young more. Let's let him start. Tyree Wilson, who's really playing really, really poor right now, he played 5 snaps today, right? Because he he just doesn't look good. Even the whole illness thing. Do you guys think he was really sick? Right? What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think Tyree Wilson was really, really sick? Or did the Raiders feel like, hey, Malcolm Kuntz is clearly better. Let's just let him play? Because our pass rush was a little bit better today, right? It wasn't great, but it was definitely getting to the quarterback more. Malcolm Kuntz looked good. He was able to kind of get after it a little bit. A couple of key third down plays, he was able to hit the quarterback or get pressure on him. One play comes to mind for me is it was a play in which Nate Hobbs broke up the pass, I believe in the end zone. They ended up kicking a field goal. I think this was when they went from 13 points to 16 points. I think that it was at that moment Malcolm Kuntz got in there and he hit the quarterback. So Tony says, why not Aiden O'Connell? It's a great question. At this point, why not? Right? I do think that if the Las Vegas Raiders do want to continue to have success and continue to try showing, all the fans that, hey, we're not tanking this season, I think they're going to continue to roll forward with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think the second you put in Aiden O'Connell, you're almost telling people that you may be looking to tank, right? Because we can look around the league right now, right? CJ Stroud isn't having a lot of success, although he had a great game today against the Jags. But Bryce Young doesn't look good. And I shouldn't say look good. You can tell they're rookies, right? Is what I'm trying to say. Anthony Richardson, you could tell he looks like a rookie. Teams that are tanking is like the Washington Commanders, right? Who have Sam Howell in there, right? And keep in mind, Commanders fans were fired up about Sam Howell kind of coming into the season. These guys definitely wanted him, right? Shout out to Goldie for the 99-cent super chat. Shout out to you. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you had a comment or not, but if I see your comment, you said it's Carr's fault drafting Byron Young. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I disagree with those people, man, that say that everything's on Derek Carr. And I know you guys are being sarcastic, but let's be honest, Derek Carr sucks, right? Or at least in the past, he's shown us that he sucks. Derek Carr didn't beat the Steelers last year. He threw three interceptions against the Steelers team and only one touchdown. He had like 175 yards. Let's not act like Derek Carr is this superstar quarterback. He's not, right? Derek Carr is very similar to Jimmy Garoppolo, right? They're very similar quarterbacks. And, I'll be the first to tell you guys, when I wanted to move on from Derek Carr for the last 4 years, I wasn't saying let's go get Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins. I was saying let's get one of these rookie quarterbacks. Let's go draft the next Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts or whoever these quarterbacks are, right, that are kind of coming out that are being picked super, super high. Let's go get one of these guys and let's rebuild around one of these guys. The biggest cheat code to build an actual roster is to go out and get a quarterback on a rookie contract. And I know a lot of people don't understand this concept. Paying a quarterback $50 million is not the way to win. It's not. There's only one Patrick Mahomes. He's the only guy that's kind of broken this mold. Most Super Bowls are won by guys on rookie contracts or on cheap contracts. Patrick Mahomes is really the only exception to that. And to me, for the Raiders to have success, go out and get a rookie quarterback, right? Jimmy G was not the right pick. I think early on, at least that's kind of what it's looking like, that was the wrong pick to have. But for all these people making those sarcastic comments, oh, Derek Carr, this and that, Derek Carr's not that great either, right? Let's just be honest. Nicholas Baker said test. Your comment definitely works, man. So shout out to you for the super chat. Matthew said McDaniels and Ziegler are clowns. No improvement on either side of the ball. How can Mark Davis justify having him be the head coach? Horrible game management. I think a lot of us gave Josh McDaniels the benefit of the doubt. Another thing we have to consider is Mark Davis is paying Josh McDaniels, right? He's paying Dave Ziegler. And he's already paid them for a certain number of years. And, it's always interesting to me how, Dave Ziegler did not draft for the New England Patriots. He did not make decisions when it came to drafting. That was Bill Belichick, all right, 100%. Dave Ziegler was for the New England Patriots when Mike Mayock was under John Gruden. They're paper GMs. They weren't the guys really making the decisions. But we're now seeing Dave Ziegler's decisions. And we can go across the board and look at his decisions. They haven't been great, right? They haven't really panned out. The whole, I could have told you guys, I've watched now for about 5 years the NFL draft guys that kind of come out. And for 3 years ago, I said draft Christian Barmore. He's going to be a really, really good defensive tackle. And he's pretty fucking good right now. I said, hey, draft Davante Wyatt. We ended up trading the pick for Davante Adams. And I'm not mad about that, but Davante Wyatt's a pretty good defensive tackle now. I said take Jalen Carter, right? And we took Tyree Wilson, and I'm not saying Tyree Wilson is a bust, right? Obviously, he'll develop. I think his foot issue is a lot worse than any of us really realize. But Jalen Carter was a generational player. And people will say, oh, he can't work in Vegas and this and that. Do you guys realize that it is the general manager's job to make sure that if there's someone with a questionable, background, questionable character, it is the general manager's job to make sure he can come in and you can pair him up with the Max Crosby, with the Bilal Nichols. Get those guys to help this guy and really keep this guy on track. It is the general manager's job to make sure that he has people in place to keep his guys on the right track. And at no point was Jalen Carter and Henry Ruggs ever comparable. One guy was drunk and one guy killed someone. One guy wasn't drunk, right? He was just racing. And the other car that he was driving fast with racing, the other people in that car were drunk, not Jalen Carter. So Jalen Carter did not make that mistake that he was the one drunk. But regardless, we decided not to take a generational talent. Rookies don't generally have the type of success that Jalen Carter's already having, especially defensive tackles. Defensive tackles take like a year or two to develop. Carter's already a top 4 or 5, impact type of player on his team, right? So I don't know. I just think that Dave Ziegler has made a lot of questionable decisions. Josh McDaniels doesn't really look better this season. And I think at this point, the Raiders really have to think about how they're going to move forward. I don't know what Mark Davis has signed McDaniels and Ziegler under. Like, is it like a 5-year contract? We've already heard in the past, and I don't know if they're rumors or if they're facts, that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler will be safe after this year. All right, they're going to get their at least 3rd season with the Raiders. And based off of what Mark Davis has done in the past, Reggie McKenzie was here for like 5, 6, 7 years. I don't even know how long. He was here for a number of years, right? John Gruden was here for a number of years as well. I don't think McDaniels and Ziegler are going to be fired after this season or at any point during the middle of this season. I think these guys are going to be here for like 4 years minimum, right? Based off of what Mark Davis has done in the past. And I don't even know if that's the right decision, honestly, as we kind of go forward. Jason Hall said Tyree Wilson played better. D played better. O is trash. I can't tell you based off of the broadcast if Tyree Wilson played better. I think, the tape will drop tomorrow. I'll watch his tape. I'm not even 100% sure how many snaps Tyree Wilson played. I really only saw him out there for a couple of times. Statistically, I don't see that he had any tackles or anything. So we'll see. We'll watch the tape tomorrow. But I do think the defense generally overall did play better today. 23 points considering that we, gave the Steelers the ball twice via turnovers. I agree with you. I think the defense played better, right? So I don't know. We'll see the tape tomorrow. Mig said, why is the running game so bad? Every O-line starter is there. JJ is back. What's the problem? Is it McDaniels? I've stated this in a previous video, but I'll state it again. So it's not every single offensive lineman. Let's be clear, right? Greg Van Roten, the right guard, is swapped out. Last year we had Alex Bars. I think Alex Bars was better. My personal opinion. I know he's not here. Even then, I think both guys suck, right? But I think Greg Van Roten really sucks. And the thing is people don't realize this. The Buffalo Bills had Greg Van Roten, and they replaced him with the rookie. They went out and drafted Steve Avila, the guard out of TCU, and he's now their starting right guard. They got rid of Van Roten. There's a reason why they got rid of this guy. He's not a good offensive lineman. And it's crazy to me that the Raiders and Dave Ziegler decided that, we couldn't even invest a 3rd-round pick in a guard. There's so many good 3rd-round guards out there right now in the NFL, guys that are starting for teams. The Raiders couldn't even invest that and said, hey, let's get one of the best guards. Let's solidify this offensive line, right? And that decision-making never made sense to me. Why you wouldn't make those investments. Instead, you take a project player in Byron Young in the 3rd round. It doesn't make sense to me. Michael Mayer. Tight ends take years sometimes to develop, right? Look how long it took TJ Hawkinson. Kyle Pitts is in year 3. He had like 3 catches today. It takes tight ends years sometimes. And I think for Michael Mayer, it's going to take him a long time for him to really develop, right? And I don't know. They're questionable, But let me tell you guys what the issue with this run game is. So the Raiders run a lot of power. So what that means is they run a whole lot of ISO concepts. They run a whole lot of, they'll run power concepts and those type of things. But when it comes to like ISO, for example, one of the things that happens is every single player right before the snap knows exactly who they're about to block, right? The center knows that I have the guy across from me. The right guard knows that, hey, there's a guy to my right, I'm going to block out. The right tackle knows I'm going to block out. The fullback knows I have that linebacker that's right there. I'm going to ISO him. So what happens is right before the Raiders snap the ball, the linebackers shift. A safety drops into the box, right? And now what happens is there's an extra guy in the box. Guys have shifted, and the Raiders, although they know who they're all blocking, a guy shifts here or there, and now the fullback doesn't know who to block. Now there's two guys kind of standing in his gap. And that has happened a lot. That actually happened a lot this past week against the Bills. I don't know how much it happened this week because the Raiders stopped running that, and I think it's part of why Johnson didn't actually play this game all that much, or at least I didn't notice him, is because I would assume that the Raiders stopped running ISO as much as they have in the past. And I would also assume that the Raiders ran more zone runs today, which is why we had more success. Even if the Steelers stack the box, if the Raiders run zone, if you run inside or outside zone, you leave the backside guys blocked. So even if you stack the box, if you're running zone, especially wide or outside zones, if you're running those things and you stack the box, it doesn't matter because you're going to leave the backside guys blocked regardless, right? So for me, again, I don't have the tape yet. I haven't watched it. I watched the video the same way you guys have all watched it. I'm going to go back and see how the Raiders found a little bit more success. We averaged, 3.6 yards per attempt, Josh Jacobs. So we obviously ran the ball better today than we had in the past. So in that aspect, I think we're definitely on the right path, right? And maybe Josh Jacobs feels a little bit more comfortable, right? Maybe he was just rusty weeks 1 and 2. We'll see as we kind of go forward of how it kind of pans out. I see a lot of you guys' comments. I'm way backed up on comments. I'm gonna go through these a little bit quicker. Damien says, looks like you were wrong about Derek Carr. Maybe I was, maybe I won't. I wasn't. We'll find out as we go forward. Braxton says Josh McDaniels will bring in AOC the last 3 to 4 games of the season. He will be good. Jimmy will be a scapegoat, and JMD will be our head coach again next season. I could definitely see that happening. I can definitely see Aiden O'Connell coming in the last 6-7 weeks of the season, winning a couple games, and then we go into the offseason with Aiden O'Connell's our guy, right? And let's get Josh McDaniels another year. I could definitely see something like that happening. If Aiden O'Connell is the guy, right? Let's just think about like the what ifs here. If Aiden O'Connell is the guy, and let's say he plays like 7 games for the Raiders this year, let's say he averages like 3 touchdowns to 1 interception. He averages like 250 yards per game, and we're scoring 24, 28 points every single one of those games. That would be something to definitely look forward to, right? Plus, guys get better as they play more, right? And one of my friends, Brett Coleman's very, very high on Aiden O'Connell, right? And Brett Coleman's a very smart football mind. He's very high on Aiden O'Connell. It was one of his guys coming out of this past draft class. If somehow Aiden O'Connell's the guy, I'd be fired up, and I'd be all in on Aiden O'Connell, right? I would give him the benefit of the doubt. But I would still be, I still wouldn't be 100% sold on the Josh McDaniels, right? That one to me doesn't make sense. Plus, I want to state this, are we 100% sure that we want to go into this offseason? And let's say we have a top 8 pick. Are we 100% sure we want Dave Ziegler to make that pick, right? Like, there's a really, really good defensive tackle coming out this year from Illinois. If he's there, and let's say like Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, are we sure that Dave Ziegler will make the right pick, right? And it's questionable, right? And I think that's part of what Mark Davis has to decide, right? 10 Commandments, the tight ends were targeted 1 time. Adams targeted 20. That's interesting. Adams had 19 targets. Michael Mayer had 1. Michael Mayer technically had 2. He had a catch, but I guess 2-point conversion stats don't count. That's interesting for sure. Shout out to you, Mario. I see that you did not tap a super chat in. If I see your comment, I'll get to it. Mario Jr. Jason Hall said can't pay 70% of our cap on these for these stats. That's just a fact, man. Let's just be honest, right? We're right now at the point where we're spending so much money on the offensive side, and the investments aren't there on the defensive side. And I don't care what anybody says. If you say, oh, but we drafted the 7th overall and Tyree Wilson, we spent the 4th overall pick back on Cleveland Farrell and this and that, those aren't the same type of investments as paying Davante Adams, paying Jacoby Myers, paying Jimmy Garoppolo, right? You're paying money for proven guys. Let's go pay money for proven guys on the defensive side, right? How much better would our team be if we brought in Jesse Bates? How much better do you think the defense would be if we brought in Jesse Bates or if we traded for Jalen Ramsey? I think we would be a lot better. Or what if we paid Javon Hargrave, right? I think the Niners ended up paying him like $20 or $21 million. How much better would we be if we spent money on those guys as opposed to Jacoby Myers or not even Myers? Like we could have easily swapped out Hunter Renfrow and maybe another guy for a proven defensive tackle. We could have easily said, hey, instead of paying Jimmy G the $21-22 million, we could have went maybe with Aiden O'Connell and went and got another defensive tackle or a linebacker or whatever it is. I think at some point you got to put the investments on the defensive side. If you want a top 12 defense, you need to pay it top 12 money, right? Our defense right now is like bottom 5 or 6 in terms of the cap spending. You can't do that. And our offense on the other side is a top 5 paid offense. You can't do that and think you're going to have success, right? You just can't. It's just what it is, right? Yeah, man, the Raiders game today was definitely disappointing. We had a shot to come back and actually have, possibly tie the game. Ultimately, I think, I think ultimately Josh McDaniels decided to kick the field goal. I think that was the wrong decision at that point, right? I think he should have went for the touchdown. And I think ultimately that was where the Raiders lost this game, right? You should have went for it at that point, right? Andrew says, everyone says you win with the quarterback on the rookie deal. Besides Mahomes, what quarterbacks have won on the rookie deal? Quarterbacks that have had success on the rookie deal, quarterbacks like Russell Wilson had success. Tom Brady was never the highest paid quarterback. You can look across the board at quarterbacks that are highly paid, right? Even Joe Burrow, for example, went to the Super Bowl on his rookie contract. Now Joe Burrow's contract's kicked in, and we'll see how much success the Bengals have going forward. You can even look at a Nick Foles who wasn't highly paid. Matthew Stafford, although he got paid by the Rams, his contract wasn't going to kick in until the following year, right? So there's examples out there. If you go and do the math on it, and I've done it in the past, quarterbacks on rookie contracts or quarterbacks on cheap contracts win you games. So what the Raiders do with Jimmy G, for example, is what would win you the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for the Raiders, Jimmy G just doesn't look very good, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting as we go forward. I watch your channel. Stand by your word or recant. I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about with that one. Lolo Vitaler says, hypothetically, now that we know McDaniels is not a good coach, do you think we may be more successful last year with Bisaccia as coach? I'm not 100% sure with that one. The thing with Bisaccia is, he could be a very good head coach. We don't know, right? But Bisaccia has had a lot of job interviews, and he's never actually gotten the head coaching job, right? He's just never gotten it. And I think there could be a reason why he never got that job. And I know there was a time when the Raiders got rid of John Gruden, or I say John Gruden resigned. I know at that same point when John Gruden resigned, Bisaccia came in and he helped lead this team to the playoffs. And that was great, right? Everything was against us. Everything was stacked against the Raiders. And we're able to have success, and we're able to win. But we're not sure that going into the following year that we would have that same success, right? It's not like we were super dominant in that season, right? I think we almost got lucky in certain games, right? And I don't want to say take away from it because we still made the playoffs that season. But I'm not sure how much success we would have with Bisaccia as our coach from that point forward, right? Would Bisaccia be the coach this season? I don't know, right? I don't know. It's hard to say, right? You could say, yeah, we would be better, but it's just an opinion at the end of the day, right? Not 100% sure. EJ says Jimmy G is Derek with slightly better legs and slightly less arm. That's fact. That's exactly what it is, at least in my opinion. Shout out to you, Greg, for the super chat. I'm going to go through some more of these comments. Matthew Knight says, love the content, bro. Raider Nation for life. I always appreciate all the super chats. I appreciate all the comments. I got a lot of comments that I'm going to go back and kind of go through and really, analyze and think about. I think tomorrow is going to be an interesting day because I got to watch the tape on this one, and sometimes it's hard. I don't think some of you guys understand this. I go back and I watch every single play 3 or 4 times so I can watch all the different pieces, all the different units. I'll watch the O line and D line first. Then I'll watch the secondary and say, all right, what coverage are they playing? Where they're playing a cover 3, a cover 4, a cover 6. And then I'll say, okay, so who made the mistake here? Right. And it's going to be hard watching this one because the Raiders sucked for a lot of this game. Right. So yeah, it's going to be interesting as we go forward. We'll see if the Raiders have success. The season's not over. We are 1-2. The season doesn't get easier either, right? We have some hard games coming up. But if the Raiders could get it going on the offensive side, and ultimately that's where it starts, right? The offense has to put up points. Scoring 7 points in the first 3.5 quarters, that shit's not acceptable. You got to put up a minimum of 24 points in the NFL, like absolute minimum. And right now, the Raiders aren't doing that. We haven't even scored more than 20 points yet, right? And that's just not acceptable, right? So the Raiders got to get better on offense, but something does tell me that, we'll see a little bit of some upside, right? Especially watching what Jimmy G did in the last drive or two, right? Getting us downfield. I think if the Raiders maybe do a little bit of, that hurry up, high pace type offense, maybe we'll have success, right? So we'll see what ends up happening. We'll be back with another video tomorrow. I also want to state this, 1-2 is not the end of the season. All right. So we'll see as we continue forward if we can have success. I know a lot of people are out on Josh McDaniels. I'm like 90% out on this guy, but I'm going to give him 1 or 2 more games to see if something can happen. Even Patrick Graham, I think, is another guy that we need to, really analyze. In fact, we just got a super chat about that. Terrell Rader says, how many games will it take before Patrick Graham is replaced? I don't know if Patrick Graham's going to get replaced. I would say that some people would say that Patrick Graham's done a pretty good job in 2 of these 3 games. And you wouldn't necessarily be wrong, right? It's going to be interesting how the Raiders move forward. Marcus Peters has a dropped interception. We gave up 1 big play in which Marcus Peters gets burned. But, that's a 14-point swing right there, right? On having a, touchdown possibly versus also giving up the touchdown on the other end. The Raiders should have won this game, right? I think we're better than the Steelers. I think the Raiders were definitely, I think we're better than the Steelers. And I think we played better than the Steelers. I think like 8 plays were the difference in this game. So we'll see as it goes forward. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to drop a comment, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Always appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.